Hey there, cruisers. I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and loves to talk ship. And today, I've got some real juicy tea to spill. So grab your drink, sit back, and let's dive right in. All right, here's the story in summary, but then I'm going to give you the details, and that's where the devil is, in the details, as it always is. There's a couple of influencers who thought it would be a brilliant idea to leave their very young kids alone back in their cruise ship cabin while they cavorted off to have some adult alone time. Yes, on a cruise ship with thousands of strangers, lots of distractions, and yeah, open access to the ocean. What could possibly go wrong? But first, let me back up a bit. Matt and Abby Howard. These are two influencers. They're known for their online presence. They host this podcast where their whole shtick is, look at my cute little wholesome family and look at my cute little wholesome kids. And in addition to their podcast, they have amassed a huge social media following, like millions of people with that whole shtick. And this includes their two cute little wholesome sons, 1-year-old August and 2-year-old Griffin. Now, make a mental ledger of these ages because this is important. They are 2 and 1. These are literal babies. And when I started to first hear about this drama, I kind of first dismissed it because I'm like, yeah, cruisers leave their kids behind in the stateroom or leave their kids unattended on a cruise ship all the time. I just got off Carnival Freedom and it was like the Wild West of unattended, unruly, bad children. But the distinction here, they weren't babies. So we are talking about babies here. And now the internet is blowing up about it because not only is it insane to leave your babies back in your stateroom alone and unattended, but the way that this unfolded and the excuses that they've made along the way, it's super messy. So here's the story. We have these influencers and they're documenting their 5-day sailing on Royal Caribbean with their cute little wholesome little family. And during their journey, they seem to have a whole litany of complaints about their cruise experience. They were sailing specifically on Royal's Navigator of the Seas. And in documenting their experience, they spoke about how nobody in their cute little wholesome little cute little family was having a good time. Specifically, the kids were not enjoying that evening main dining room or MDR experience for dinner each night. Shocker, an MDR dinner is designed to be a somewhat lengthy affair. It's usually around an hour and a half. And if you cruise even with some frequency, you know that. You even know it can take upwards of 2 hours. Well, apparently, mommy and daddy did not enjoy their children being bored, and kids being kids, they inevitably got bored and it got annoying. So here's where the story goes left and it gets wild. They could have simply skipped out on the MDR experience because let me remind you, going to the MDR, you're not required to do it. It's strictly optional. Nobody forces any cruiser to have a long dinner in the MDR. They could have dined elsewhere. And they could have taken advantage of Royal Caribbean's award-winning free childcare. I mean, that's a huge perk of cruising. You get free childcare. But no, they made the brilliant decision to leave their 2 small children, again, ages 1 and 2, back in the stateroom, alone, unattended. Say what? But let me put it back in reverse in a second and talk about the food options on a cruise just to give you an idea of all of the different alternatives they had, specifically on Royal Caribbean. If their kids didn't like the MDR experience, and I can't blame them, because even I get bored sometimes during those long MDR dinners, but there are so many other choices. Royal Caribbean is known for its amazing pizza. It's called Sorrento's. It is a fast casual setting. You wait in a short line. It moves briskly. You order your food. You take your food to a table and you sit at the table and you eat. It's fast. It's easy. It's delicious. And huge plus, you can supervise your children while you eat. Score. They also have Windjammer, which is Royal Caribbean's huge buffet. It's filled with dozens of options each night, including options specifically meant for kids. And get this, a lot of cruisers don't realize this. When it comes to the buffet, most nights it's the same menu as the MDR. It's just not served to you. You don't order it. It's not on a nice little fancy plate, but it's really the same stuff. So if you choose one night on a cruise to eat in the buffet, or in Royal Caribbean's case, they call their buffet the Windjammer, it's the same stuff you're gonna get in the MDR. So if Matt and Abby chose to just do that instead, they wouldn't even miss out on anything. And then finally, there's room service. Many cruise lines have cut back on room service. I hate that. And they now charge for it, but it's still free on Royal Caribbean. They do charge a small flat delivery fee. It's $7.95 plus an 18% gratuity. But with that fee, you can order all the food you want, even for a family of 4 for free. And it's really good food too. So the long and the short of it, they had so many other dining options. They did not have to go to the MDR. They did not have to put their kids at risk to have dinner. There are a ton of options. But here's the kicker. They also had free childcare options. Royal Caribbean's Adventure Ocean program provides free childcare for kids. Like many cruise lines, they have free childcare. It's a huge perk of cruising. And Royal Caribbean's is really good, and it was right there for them to use. Now, when this story blew up on the internet, Matt and Abby didn't do themselves any favors because they first tried to defend themselves by claiming, well, the baby didn't like kid camp. Well, my kid hates kid camp, but she's still gonna go. That was a really flimsy excuse, and I think they realized that. So they kind of backtracked later to come out with new excuses that sounded a little better. For example, their big claim now is that, well, all the spots for small children in Royal Caribbean's kid camp program, they were booked up. And I get it, that's true, that can happen. But here's the irony of it. Cruise childcare options are usually only limited like that for the really small children category under the age of 3. Why, you ask? Well, you probably know. Because small children under the age of 3 need more care and more supervision, and the cruise lines are required to have a much lower staff-to-child ratio for the category of children under the age of 3. Because guess what? Children that are ages 1 and 2, babies, they need supervision. Crazy, right? But even still, they had options. They could have checked daily to see if any openings came available in the Kid Camp program, and that's pretty common. All they had to do was be diligent, put in the effort, and check every day. And if no spots were available, then they could utilize one of Royal Caribbean's other myriad non-MDR dining options that I just detailed. But what did they do instead? They decided they wanted some nice, quiet, mommy-daddy adult dinner time for a nice sit-down dinner in the MDR, sans children, and their solution was to leave those babies in the stateroom unattended. Now, what makes the situation even worse is, one, well, the fact that they made such a boneheaded decision in the first place. I mean, really, this is some poor decision-making. But two, the fact that they openly publicized this idiot move to their millions of followers. They did this willingly. But also three, the fact that they then later tried to downplay the situation, make excuses for it, when they rightfully caught heat for it. It's dumb, dumb, on top of dumb. Just a whole lot of dumb happening here. What they did is they dug a hole for themselves, but they kept digging it deeper. And what really outraged people, especially people that cruise often and people that had been following this when it went viral, is that Abby had shared a photo on social media, which is now deleted, of a child monitoring system. And this made it clear that contrary to their claims, this situation was not just some unexpected circumstance, a misfortunate series of events that they haplessly found themselves in, but rather it was a situation there by design that they had planned in advance. All along, they knew on this cruise that they wanted to enjoy a nice, quiet, adult-only dinner, leaving the babies back in the room under the gentle care and loving supervision of a baby monitor. And a little bit of a grim side note, let me take a moment to remind you who else famously tried this let's just leave the kids asleep in the room while the adults enjoy dinner approach. That's the family of Madeline McCann. Enough said. And look, I get it. Parenting is exhausting. And when you're on a cruise, you want to enjoy your vacation. But a cruise ship is not the place to test out that whole, hey, let's see if the kids can handle being alone experiment, especially when your children are still literally babies. And especially when you have 100 different dining options, and especially when you have free childcare. Just to reiterate, what other situation at home, on vacation, elsewhere, do you get free childcare? You get it on a cruise, and they didn't use it. Now, all of that being said, obviously, I am as outraged as everybody else. The couple has deserved every bit of heat they have gotten, and it's a lot. But this might surprise you. At this point, I urge everyone, just give this couple a small bit of grace. Those of us that are parents, we've all made mistakes, we've all done dumb things that we regret, and we've all made really poor choices that thankfully weren't broadcast to millions of people. And reminder, that was their choice, dumb on top of dumb. And while I do think the decision-making here was unequivocally stupid, I can kind of understand their mindset in trying to understand what they were thinking and being empathetic. I mean, I love cruising because it can feel very safe. And that's a great thing about it. It's the first thing I ever did as a solo traveler because it does feel safer. You feel like you're in a small, contained, and safe city. There's really nowhere to go. So it's not like people worry about a Madeline McCann type situation with their kid being kidnapped because there's literally nowhere to take a kid off the ship. And you start to see the same people on your sailing over and over again. You start building friendships, build a sense of comfort, a sense of safety, and a sense of familiarity. But that's just it. It's just a sense. Bad things can and do happen on cruise ships. And this lesson goes not just for this family, but for anyone. So while I would personally never leave kids this young especially behind, unattended on a cruise ship or anywhere else, trying to understand why they did what they did. Because obviously they thought it was just a-okay. So I'm willing to give them a moment of grace and forgiveness because we all do really dumb, embarrassing, and misguided things. But this comes with a big caveat. They need to own their stuff. If they would just come out on their big social media platforms, you've got them, but you got to come out with a mea culpa, take ownership and accountability for what they did, admit it was all on them and that it was just stupid. And for the love of Pete, stop making excuses and kind of pointing the finger at Royal Caribbean. Royal Caribbean did nothing wrong here. I think that would go a really long way. These are young parents. They're just a couple of years into this, and like all the dumb things parents do, I hope this is a learning moment for them and they never do anything so stupid again. And thankfully, nothing bad happened here. We didn't have another Madeline McCann situation. And the potential for a bad situation with this family hopefully never does happen because now they've learned a valuable lesson and they hopefully never repeat this huge mistake. But by owning up to it fully and completely and explaining how they learned from it and stressing the fact that they'll never do it again, I think for these two would be the move. So what's the takeaway here for parents and cruisers, and what can we all learn from this misfortunate, wild, and super messy situation? Long story short of it, if you're traveling with young kids, know that you've got options. With Royal Caribbean, Adventure Ocean is a great one. Almost all the cruise lines have their own version of Kid Camp. And yes, sometimes those spots for the babies and toddlers, they can fill up fast because they're limited in space, especially during busy sailings and peak season. But that doesn't mean you just throw your hands up and leave the kids to their own devices. You can plan ahead by booking Adventure Ocean as soon as possible. If they do book up, call, ask if there's any openings throughout the day because they do come open. And if you can't get one, just explore other options. Some cruise lines even offer in-cabin babysitting services. Of course, that's an extra fee. So you can check ahead and see if there are any opportunities for your particular cruise line. And never forget, there are so many dining options. You don't have to go to the MDR. Some people actually hate the MDR because, like those kids, they find it very long and boring. There's also room service. It might not always be free, but it is an option as well. You can even enjoy a romantic dinner in your cabin while the kids watch a movie right next to you. Okay, that's not exactly romantic, but if you're determined to have a romantic couples only vacation, hire a babysitter back at home and leave the kids there. No stress, no worries, just a nice evening with everyone safely accounted for. So let me know what you think about this situation. Is the internet being too harsh? Am I foolish and being a little more forgiving? Would you leave your kids alone in a cruise cabin? And if so, at what age? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe and visit my blog at profmelissa.com for free port guides, cruise resources, advice, and everything cruise related.